So welcome back to iPhotography, and today I've got a bit of an unusual product for photographers anyway to actually have a look at. This is the Hollyland Mars M1 Enhanced Field Monitor. Field monitors, photography, do we really need it? This is kind of what I've got it for, is effectively to take a photographer's point of view on it. A lot of the things on here I've not used before, and a lot of the things you may not think photographers necessarily need, but we're basically going to give it the photographer's point of view in trying to understand whether field monitors, which are normally used for videography, filming, etc., whether this could actually be brought into a photography sphere, whether there is a benefit for it. On first initial impressions, I think it's a cool little piece of kit. As I said, I've started to think of some benefits as to where it could work as photography, in photography itself. But we're going to go through, have a look at it a bit more clearly, go through a bit of an unboxing, put it on, look through some of the settings, etc. And yeah, ultimately just see if it's for our type of industry.
Step behind the camera and welcome.
So let's start off with the unboxing to this Hollyland Mars 1 Enhanced. So this is basically the enhanced version of the previous version of the 5.5-inch wireless transceiver, and also an emitter as well. So in terms of presentation, looks pretty nice, good solid box. We've had products before sent to us from Hollyland. Okay, so looking in the box, first things first, we have got some screen protectors. Always good to have. If you've put screen protectors on your phone or your tablets before, you know how these things work. But it's a nice little touch. It's something you don't necessarily think of when it comes to photography accessories. Obviously, you'll have sometimes screen protectors on the back of your camera, but it's nice to actually have them on other accessories, be it like field monitors as well, because obviously, like the word says, they're going outside a lot of the time. Sometimes they're used in studios, etc. But it's always good just to have that little bit of added protection there. So it's not a flimsy one, it's a little bit of a harder, thickened plastic, but it's nice to have that with a little bit of a sleeve inside. Now, for the actual transmitter itself, looks pretty nice. Really good kind of packaging. They're nice and solid. So you're good to know that, you know, when these things arrive, if they're coming from abroad, they're going to be in good condition. There is a little bit of film across the top of it, just again, give it that little bit of protection whilst in transit. So I'm not going to worry too much about that and take that off there yet, but let's just see what's in the box. So we've got initially the unit itself, then so you'll also find inside the box that there'll be some type of power connection. So you've got a DC in voltage cable here going to the plug. Obviously, just make sure you get the right one for wherever you are in the world. But I have also been sent very kindly by Hollyland a USB to micro USB connection, just because the camera that I probably will use it on more so will have that connection. So you will be able to get these other cables. You may already have these cables anyway, but it's just a simple standard HDMI to a micro HDMI is what I've got. You can get micro minis and standard sizes, all different sizes there. That's just the one that I've got for my camera. Now let's come back to the box. Also in here, nice little customer care card, just to give you a bit of information about after sales, as per normal, and the packing list of exactly what's in here. So obviously we've got the monitor itself, we've got the capsule antenna, the adapters, the locking cables, and obviously the tempered glass and all the other bits and pieces. So if you need any kind of quick guides, any references, that's all in there as well. And so this is the OTG adapter, if I can actually get it out and I can show you. So that's a little adapter that sits in there, and that's USB 3 transmission to USB-C. So it's really nice that USB-C is becoming way more universal now, because it just adapts with so many different devices. Ideal. So I think we need to have kind of a first impression. In terms of the weight of it, it's heavy, but not necessarily unexpectedly heavy, because these field monitors, imagine them effectively as like a tablet that's going to be used to display your images either from the back of the camera or remotely from the camera onto the screen, you know, if you're not using them on top of one another. Turn this around so you can see you've got a standard HDMI out, HDMI in port, they're the larger ports. Then on the back here, you've got a battery unit. So if you are going to be using this externally, you can use a mobile battery on the back of it there for portability. But otherwise, you've got a DC in, DC out there if you want to kind of direct voltage. Then you've also got your standard on-off button at the side there, and the USB-C, and a headphone jack as well. Because that's also something you've got to consider if you are recording video as a photographer. Obviously, the field monitor is going to be great for seeing yourself and looking back kind of at the screen if you don't have a flippy screen. But to actually also monitor the levels of the audio as well is going to be really, really important if you're recording voice or doing interviews or anything like that. And then you've got your antennas on the top here. But yeah, I think ultimately I just want to get into it and I want to actually have a look at it a bit more clearly and a bit more closely in terms of the menus, system, etc. Okay, so in terms of actually powering the unit, all I'm going to do here is just use the cable that they've sent me, but obviously if you've got one of your own, then that's absolutely fine. Just simply attach the battery. Now, for some reason, it may have just kind of been a mishap. They didn't actually send me a battery with the unit, which kind of is a bit of a shame, but would luck have it that I actually had a battery that is equivalent. Now, this comes from a very, very old Sony cam. So there's a little release button on the back here that you just hold down and, ooh, it's a bit of a grip, but I will be able to pull it out. There we go, just like that. So yeah, so it's a pretty chunky battery, but it was just by chance I happened to have an old video camera lying around. And what are the chances, instead of me having to wait kind of ages to get a replacement or actually get a battery to begin with and then put it in here, I have it now, so brilliant. So yeah, all you're effectively doing is just mounting the battery in here. So the actual battery that you get, I imagine will be smaller than this. Well, hopefully it will anyway. But anyway, so once it's all attached, obviously you've got all the ports on the back here that we've looked at. You've got an SDI port here, which just makes it compatible with a lot of different types of cameras. So this may not be necessarily DSLR cameras because you can connect via HDMI for a lot of those. But any kind of older video cameras, then this kind of SDI port is going to be great for them. In terms of actually getting this baby on, it's just as simple as connecting it. So I've got my camera here, and all I'm using is just a very small, I think it's like a micro HDMI port there. Putting that in there, and then we also want to have the HDMI in, if I get it around the right way correctly. There we go. So they got all connected up here, and then just on the back, say with that power button, it's just as simple as holding it down for about 3 seconds or so, and you should, there we go, start to get a screen coming up. And the screen will give you a little bit of a screensaver to begin with. Obviously, if there was actually anything, viable kind of through the camera itself, I don't think I've actually got it kind of turned on properly, or there we go, it's got something set up there. It will look a little bit blurry and you will get some information kind of pops up at the screen, but effectively this is the layout here. So everything's touchscreen. It just makes it so much more easier. Got a lot of icons down the bottom here you can run through. You've got histograms there, you've got kind of peaking charts, you can turn your zebras on as well so you know where your exposure is lying. Now, some of these elements aren't going to be very, very useful for photographers, or just something you may not be interested in, or something you may not necessarily want to explore. That's absolutely fine, because this is really designed for videographers, people kind of making videos and making content quite regularly, whereas photographers, you're obviously just using your camera for stills, maybe not recording so much video. But I think it's always good to know exactly what the options are in there and how you can play around with them. So you've got a little option there at the end that can just rotate the screen. You've got a simple record and playback. You've got the option to lock the screen as well. So just by any chance, your fingers slip over the screen, it's not going to change any of the settings. So basically, this Mars M1 enhanced monitor obviously is an improved version on the original Mars M1, and it's there designed as a transmitter and a receiver, basically a monitor that's kind of all in one, that's great for you to project any video that goes from your camera onto this monitor. So it can be used on top of the camera itself, it can be used remotely, but ultimately it's a lot lighter. It's reduced the weight from the previous version, and obviously it can be therefore compatible with other Hollyland Mars products, be it like the 4K, the Pro 300, and obviously the other M1s as well. So if you've got an M1 already, it doesn't mean you have to kind of throw it away. You can basically use them as two kind of dual monitors, which are very, very easy to pair together. You just simply kind of press the pair button and they pretty much work together. They are that kind of intuitive. The thing that is different with this one is that it's also got the new Holly OS system, so slightly different layout, but you've still got the all standard controls as like the waveforms, the vector scopes, the zebra patterns, aspect marks. And now some of this for photographers is completely irrelevant, and some aspects and tools of it you won't use at all, but a lot of them are adjustable. As you can see on screen, you can improve the opacity of them and the transparency of them, so they make bit more noticeable when you actually see them on screens. And you've got a nice kind of slidey little bar at the bottom where you can kind of move some of these tools around, just so you've got a little bit more options and you're not having to jump through menus. I think that's kind of quite nice actually. You'll actually find that the Mars M1 Enhanced actually also supports 4K 30 FPS HDMI inputs as well. You have also got this standard definition input that just gives you a little bit more connectivity options, you know, if you're adding lots of other types of tools and devices to your setup, etc. But it's good to know that you have got that slightly higher definition opportunity to kind of output. I've only been using it with 1080 and it's worked absolutely fine, but you have just got that flexibility if you are doing 4K video, which I know a lot of videographers do these days, and even photographers for the likes of putting their content on YouTube. That's kind of quite helpful as well, just to give yourself that higher definition and better bit rate. And it's very, very easy to actually switch the device from being a transmitter to a receiver. In the settings, you've got a few different options from wireless display system and device info, but each of those options, there is a little sub-menu with them. You can turn the wireless on and off. It's dead quick, as I say, very, very easy to switch between transmitter and receiver. The device will reset itself just to reset up, and you can put them into different channels as well if you are using multiple different monitors and different devices, so they're all working on independent channels. That works quite easily, and obviously you can change the display outputs as well. If you want to change the brightness of the actual monitor display, that's kind of quite helpful. Obviously it'll reserve a little bit of battery life as well, and obviously there's volume controls on there at the same time, and like a headphone jack you can stick in at the side. So it's kind of time to put together what I really think of this unit. I mean, for a photographer, do we need them? On the whole, I would say no, but I thought of a couple of good situations where it could be very useful. Potentially, it may be a bit over the top, but if you're going to use it a lot, it could be very, very handy. So obviously, if you're working in business, this goes without saying now that photographers don't necessarily just stop at taking stills. Video becomes a bigger and bigger part of your repertoire. You know, as you're going into kind of deeper connections with your clients, you may just be shooting stills, but then they may want video content from you. And this can be very, very helpful to kind of understand the exposure of the shots, because effectively, it's just really giving you the same view as to what you're getting on your 3.5 inch monitor on the back of the camera, and making it, you know, much bigger by another couple of inches. So that can be useful, because sometimes it is a little bit hard to kind of understand or kind of clearly see exactly the exposure on the back of your camera, where you're focused, and also kind of understanding what your shot would look like in different crops as well, because obviously this has got a choice in terms of how you actually kind of crop the image with the aspect ratio on the back of the camera. So that can be quite useful if you're going into business and if you're going to use it a lot of the time. The other time I thought of, now this is where I think it could be a little bit OTT, is that, say for example, on the back of this little Sony camera that I've got here, and I use it kind of from time to time, it's got a flippy screen, so it flips out on the back there. But if I'm doing any kind of recording where I'm actually talking to the camera, I can't see what's going on. Everything on the back here doesn't come out. It doesn't flip around the side or anything like that. And a lot of Sony cameras have that. Some cameras do have the flippy screen where it kind of comes out and rotates around. I think some Canons do. So that could be quite useful there. But if you were effectively to mount these two together, though I haven't got the same connection, so all it is a 1/4 inch screw, and then you would effectively need a similar connection to slide into the shoe there at the top of the camera. You could kind of basically put the two together there, so you could see exactly what you're seeing on screen. So it would connect up, and everything that you're talking in towards the camera is basically reflected back up here on the screen, transmitted outwards, so you can see it really clearly. Plus you can make any changes on the screen very, very easily. So with it being touchscreen, it's dead simple. There is a little locking button at the side there if you just end up not wanting to kind of change any of the settings accidentally. If you've got a lot of people around you, you can actually also do the same, I believe, as well by pressing the start button on the back. If you press that there once, it locks the screen, and then if you press it again, it unlocks it as well. So it's just another quick way of doing it with a bit more of tactileness anyway. But overall, as I said, it's a bit of a luxury. If you're going to be using it in business, then I think there is definitely uses for it if video is becoming more and more, an important part of what you're offering as a business, or it's something you'd like to offer, but you don't feel that you've got the full set of equipment there. Maybe you've got a good camera, good lens, etc. But a field monitor can be very useful because, say, it doesn't have to be directly attached to the camera either. This is something that, say, if you were filming on site with a client, because this can all work remotely, because it can effectively be paired up through the transmitter and receiver, your client could actually hold this and watch what you're filming, what you're recording on your camera remotely. So they don't have to be stood looking right over your shoulder, which is sometimes a nice benefit. You feel like you've got the pressure of a customer kind of leaning over your shoulder and looking at everything that you do. This is a way that they can actually kind of still see what's going on, but not be right on top of you. So I think it's kind of good. There's good uses in that sense as well. And obviously this can be paired up with other transmittable devices within the Hollyland range. So if you've got other transmitters and receivers, other smaller monitors, then you can also pair them up together. It's dead easy. It's just effectively a case of basically turning them all on, pressing pair at the same time, and they will find each other. It's that kind of straightforward with all this technology. But as I'm finding so far with Hollyland, they do have a very, very good range of products there. So I don't think there'll ever be an issue, in respects to actually kind of pairing things up. As long as the technology is working, it should be pretty straightforward and pretty easy. So yeah, ultimately, looking at it from the point of view of photographer, I think it's a luxury. I think there are benefits to it. It comes down to your budget as to whether something like this kind of falls within it or not. If you're going to be using it a lot, then obviously field monitors can be very, very useful. And there are many other field monitors out there. But in fairness, for this one, for me kind of trying this one out first time here, quality wise, very, very good, but that's to be expected with the Hollyland. I've reviewed products for them before, and they've always got a very, very good build quality. It would be nice to actually get the proper battery for this as well, because I don't believe like the actual battery, though this one fits, the one that they come with is like the same size, because that feels a lot bigger. I may be right, it may actually be the exact same one, but it feels a lot bigger. But it does actually work quite nicely when it's rested onto a surface. It just kind of sits there quite nicely and angled, really. So yeah, there is benefits to it possibly. But yeah, overall, as I said again, it's a bit of a luxury. I think it's really, really cool, very, very useful in a lot of instances, but that comes down to the individual. If you buy the product, I don't think you're going to be unhappy with it at all. I think it's very, very responsive. It's got a lot of different options on there, in respects to kind of what you see similar on the back of the camera, and you also get a direct view of what's coming through the back of your camera as well, which is quite useful. So yeah, ultimately that's for you to decide. As a photographer that kind of runs a business, I can certainly see there's benefits. I think I would have something like this. I possibly wouldn't have chosen it as one of my first kind of must-need accessories, but on viewing, kind of playing around with it, seeing what the benefits are, I think it's a good shout.